Hello and welcome back to Ruby the Elite. And today we continue on with the 1985 Honda Elite 250 Restoration Volume 2 video. Try saying that 10 times. Well, what have we done so far with this Elite 250? Well, we took the panels off and we're starting to address what's underneath them. Lots of fun things there. We took the tires off. Wrong size, wrong speed rating, wrong kind of tread, wrong. Never to be back on the bike. We addressed the shocks. We might have found a very cool replacement for the bed springs that are on the bike now. If we can get away with a direct replacement, that's going to be very cool because the PCX 150 shocks are well-made Honda parts. So if we can reuse those, that's a bonus. We found some shoddy wiring under the panels. Let's just hope that we won't continue to find any more of that. I'm pretty sure I will, but we'll talk more about that in a minute when we look more at the wiring. The first thing I want to mention, though, before we move on, and I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but I don't care, I'm going to mention it anyway. When you buy one of these bikes like I have, you're going to want to beautify it. You've seen me do that in all my videos. You know, I would try to make it look as pretty as I can, but that's not my first objective. It's not even my second. The first objective is always safety first. Make sure before you get on the bike or you put somebody else on the bike that you go through and look everything over first. Don't think just because I'm making these videos that I'm doing this for your benefit, because I'm not. If I don't make a video, I would still do everything that I'm doing. And that's because who knows who's been under these panels? 35 years, who knows who worked on it and what kind of mess they made. You're putting all your faith in a bike you know nothing about. You're crazy and a fool if that's the way that you're going to run it. You're going to bring it home because it looked pretty and had minimal miles and just gas it and go. You're a fool. This has 2 tires on it. It's a motorcycle. You know, who knows what could happen? But your safety should always be first in mind. Get it running optimally, and then third, beautification. Go through and look at the parts that I ordered. Almost all of them have to do with either safety or getting the bike running optimally. I bought those parts, and I do for all my bikes because I want to make sure it's safe. If you look through your service manual, you'll see there is a record telling you what to replace and at what mileage. 95% of the time, none of that's been done. So go through that entire thing with your new bike. I just want you to be safe, folks, because now I'm looking at this wiring and more good news there, I guess. And as I gaze, I can already tell there's tape that doesn't belong in there. It's falling apart. We'll look at that in a minute because I can see that's going to be a headache. But we have the wheel off and we're going to address the brakes next. And also clean under here as well. But got some brand new brakes that we're going to put on. And I also had to look at that exhaust gasket. I got to order that as well. And then go back to that mess of wiring. But these are the brakes I ordered. Great sets. Original sets. That also come with the springs. So they are OEM. And I like to put back on the bike what was originally on the bike if I can. Once we take a look at these old brakes, you can already see there's brake dust all over them. You really don't want to disturb any of that brake dust because it can be very harmful to breathe. So make sure the first thing you do is put on some kind of mask. Something to protect yourself just until you get all this brake dust under control. Something, like this is fine. Just make sure you wear something. And here you go. Got the old set off very simply. And now I will go ahead and clean under here. There's all different kinds of products that you can use. I just buy the same old stuff. I either buy brake clean or I buy this Super Tech brake parts cleaner. Spraying it down, just getting rid of all the old nastiness that's in there. And just make sure you put something underneath. And I spray it down, clean it up, no worries. Next thing we'll do is start beautifying. Trying to clean up all this old muck that's been on the bike for 30 years. It does take a bit of elbow grease in order to get it off. Keeping the old pads and springs put together, I will assemble the new ones. Here are the springs, which are identical to the old springs. And you can see right away that the new pads are almost twice as thick as the old ones. This is going to help definitely with stopping power. That's much needed. When you go to install the new brakes, put the springs on first. It makes a much easier time of replacing them if they're put together ahead of time. And there you go. They're very simple to install. The front brakes, same situation, but this time the pads aren't as bad, probably because the front brakes didn't get used as much. But I have an OEM set, and if you can, try to replace the front and back brakes at the same time. It's just so that you know in the future that when you go to replace them again, they're the same age. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and tackle these the same way as we did the back. Well, I just returned from Honda and they put the tires on for me. This is one of the few things I will not do anymore. I much rather have them do it. They can take them off and on in a very short amount of time. Me with using spoons and messing up my arm again, no, not happening. I had an injury on my left arm and I really don't want to aggravate it by putting on some 10-inch tires. It's not exactly easy to do. The smaller the rim, the harder it is to do. And, I could get it done and I have in the past, but I'll let Honda take the credit this time again. But we're going to go ahead and clean the rim up next. I'm going to get out my Quick Glow cleaner. This stuff works pretty good at removing some of the old rust if I find any. And I'll also use some of my orange cleaner. That works really good. There's a little bit of rust, but not much. I think overall these will clean up okay. I guess we'll see. Well, what do you think? I think they came out pretty nice. You got to remember that every little spot is not going to come off. These are 35 years old and the gold overall looks pretty good. I mean, they could have been much worse than what they are. Once you put them on, unless you're sitting and staring at them from 5 inches away, they look pretty good. So, after about a good 35 minutes of elbow grease trying to get all the old grime off, I think it paid off because, in my opinion, they look gorgeous. Our next focus is going to be these electrical connections that are right here in the front of the bike. A lot of the tape is falling off. It's filthy under here. There's some tape that I'm not exactly sure what it's covering. And a lot of it's just moving around and, this is just a mess. So I'll go through each connection, clean it up, make sure everything is the way it's supposed to be. And let's see what we find. And this was exactly what I was hoping I was not going to find. More of these stupid connections. Except these are right next to other ones. Look at the one right to its left. Hardly any tape on it. I'm sure that's the same way. This guy was a fool. You shouldn't do this. And if you are going to do it, then you're putting your own life in danger. Each one of these I'll go through. I'll make sure they're all right. This is one of the reasons why when you think 35 years you'll find anything, there you go. Finding stupid stuff like this. Anyways, I'll go ahead and fix all this back to the way it needs to be. After about 45 minutes, I found 3 more that were just like that first set, where they were twisted and covered with some electrical tape, and that was falling off those as well. So I went ahead and fixed all 4. I also went through all of the other connections and made sure they were good. I replaced all the old electrical tape with some new tape, and I also used contact cleaner on each connection just to make sure it was in good shape. And now I think I can ride without worry. So if you buy one of these bikes, here you go. Here's something that you definitely should address. At least look it over. All right, let's switch some gears to the other side. We have this airbox / collection type system. It's connected to the carb and wraps around. Very unique. Not like any other bike I have. But we'll take the whole thing off and inspect everything with it. We'll also take the front cover off the transmission and take a look inside there. Got some nice rash there. I'll probably end up repainting that flat black just like I did Ruby. I like the look of it. And same black that I used on the exhaust. But let's go ahead and get started. And the first part I took over is called a cover belt case element. I didn't name the part, folks. Honda did. But it has 3 screws. And it has a little band that holds it on. And there is a couple more bolts that I removed as well. You can see one right there and the other one inside. And you know, you have the air filter, but I wonder if anybody is going to be alarmed that they didn't know about this. This is an element that's on the inside of this that's got to be cleaned. And this has obviously never been cleaned. So you take it off and clean it and then add some oil to it and reinstall it. I recommend when you start to remove all of the bolts and nuts and screws for this that you utilize HondaPartsNation.com. They've got a parts fiche breakdown, and it makes it easy for you to follow and see where each one of the nuts and bolts are connected. It definitely is a godsend so that you don't remove stuff you don't need to remove. It's helping me greatly right now. You got different screws and nuts and things that are hidden beyond cables. It helps point those all out to you. Well, the beginning or the front of it just came off in my hand. This collection box or whatever this thing is called, I'm not sure of the actual name. It goes and connects right there to the front of the carb. And from there it goes all the way to the side into the air filter. So it's all connected and starts there. And it wasn't even on tight. It just fell right off. A lot of good the rest of the stuff is going to do if the beginning part's not connected. Just another aggravation. But, you know, that K&H carb that's there as well, that's not the original carb. Not sure what is wrong with the original. I found it in a box. We might rebuild that and put it back in. Who knows? We'll see what happens with this one. But the beginning is out. Let's continue to pull the rest of this out of here. And I'm trying to point out here to y'all some of the things that I encountered. This particular connection, don't forget about it. Otherwise, it didn't want to come off. And I looked over that parts fiche and found all these different things. This I used some curved needle nose and I was able to get that off. But be careful, you didn't want to pull too hard on that and have it come off the other side. And there you go. Probably the first time this has ever been off the bike. I wouldn't doubt it. And we got some cleaning to do. We got our spark plug visible. Of course, that's going to be coming up soon. And we'll look everything over under here just so I take care of it now before I put that box back on. And now you can see this is as far as I could wipe. Before all this was on top of here, I couldn't get to any of these areas. And I tried to get it cleaned up, but now it'll be much easier for me to get a rag around in here. We're going to take care of that spark plug next and clean around that. Let's hope that it's at least the right plug. I've had some experiences in the past where I find the wrong part number plug. And we're also going to take a look at the shock. That's coming up too. I got to take this side off, which has not been removed, and get those all put in place. That's all coming up soon. And our magic rag unearthed some silver. Didn't see that a few moments ago. Oh, just so you know, I did put on the rear end after I fixed up the wiring. That's all put back together. And this side came out real nice. Now you might ask yourself, why would he take the time to clean all this up if you're just going to put a tire and an exhaust over it and cover it all up anyway? Well, there's only one word I can tell you, and that's because I want to be proud of what I worked on. I could have just put those things back on and not cared. Well, you work on the bike the way you want, if you are asking that question, and I'll continue it to do my own way. There's really nothing more I can say to that. I just want to be proud of what I worked on, that's all. Onto the spark plug. You can see the one that I bought is at the very bottom. And it says for extended high-speed riding. It's probably the hottest plug and most performance. This is the gap. So we'll go ahead and we'll gap the new plug. But first, let's get the old one out. Sticking the tool on the plug. Just use a screwdriver. And with very little force, this one's actually tighter than it needed to be, the old plug will come off. This is a universal spark plug tool. Get one, folks. And this is the plug that came out of the bike, which was in pretty good shape actually, but it's a 6EA9, and it is the standard plug. So at least we had the right plug in there originally. And here's the plug I purchased, the 7EA9 version. Make sure you use your gapping tool. In the service manual, it tells you exactly what the gapping needs to be. And gently turn the spark plug until it's tight. And then with very little force, lightly tighten it. And that is all you need to do. Do not over tighten your spark plug. Lightly tight is all you need. And next we'll go ahead and check and clean the connections on the ignition coil, just so that we know we're getting optimal performance out of it. After I went through the coil, I went ahead and went through each one of these other wires as well. Just going through each connection and cleaning it with contact cleaner and checking this side for the work I did earlier just to make sure I didn't miss anything, and then went back along every connection, checking my tape, making sure everything was tight, and no worries there. Next is our transmission case. Been looking forward to that. Start with those 2 bolts there. Before we do though, let's remove this floorboard. It'll give us much easier passage into that transmission. Look at this though. What an idiot. Couldn't even put it back on the right way. It's quite obvious that it's not on right, and he just left it like that. Anyways, with it out of the way, it's going to definitely help us. Hopefully I won't have to remove much more in order to get that case off. I think I should be good though. I guess we'll find out. And off with the transmission cover we are. And looking under here, it looks too clean, folks. This looks way too clean. Not a whole lot of dust under here. Somebody's replaced this belt. I'm willing to bet this isn't original. I'm going to measure this up and see. But, you know, there's not a whole lot of dust under here like I would have thought there would have been. This bell don't look to be in that great a shape, but it doesn't matter. I've got a whole new clutch assembly. But I bet you the clutch weights are all worn down anyways. We'll find that out. We'll compare them to the brand new ones I have. We also bet that nobody's been in that variator. I can't wait to find out though. We got to remove these two nuts and then we can see all the fun underneath. And using my trusty impact wrench, I have loosened this nut on the left side. Just be sure not to lose that washer because that's what's next. This thing that's got fins on it, just so you know, this is called a drive face. Just wanted to give you the proper Honda term for it. Once you remove that though, you're going to right away see that the belt is sitting on the drive boss. When you go to reinstall the new belt, just make sure it's sitting on there like this. Otherwise, you're going to have problems putting that drive face back on. Now, let's go ahead and remove the nut that is right there on the front of the clutch. Once we take this off, it will allow us to remove the bell, which has got some rust on it. And it's also going to probably have some dust on the inside of it. So just be ready when you pull this off to do it very gently. That way not to disturb any of that old dust that's sitting in there. Usually that dust makes it throughout the whole transmission. That's why I think this has been cleaned somewhere in its past. Probably when that belt was replaced. I will take that belt and put it next to my new one and just see if there's a thickness difference. And I've got a feeling it's pretty new. Look at the weights. That's what's right here. These weights are what expand in and out, and they have these little pads on them. Those pads hit the bell, and that's what allows the bike to move. They are extremely worn. So if you ask the question, should you replace those at 11,000 miles? The answer to that question is yes, because you can see that these are definitely past the service limit. And now that we have the clutch off, we will do a little bit of cleaning underneath here. It's not too bad though. I like this little thing here. It connects up to a vent and brings some air in from the bottom. But what's interesting is what is right there. You see that going around the variator at the bottom? That's not supposed to be there. That is grease. And that tells me that there's still grease inside of this. Because that's what ends up happening, is that grease comes out, and when it does, it makes the worst mess. Now we'll go ahead and we'll take the boss off, and then we'll take a look at the back. I went ahead and removed the dry boss out of the center, and what can we see inside on this? By using this screwdriver, I'm going to go ahead and remove this grease plate. I've already taken off the 3 bolts that held it on. My hands are already filthy because look at all the grease inside. You know, back in the 80s, Honda and other manufacturers, they thought it was a good idea to use this grease. And what they thought it would do is they thought it would help the rollers move. Every time this ram plate would go up and down, the rollers would move. This is the ram plate that I'm talking about. You know, because there was so much grease, it actually caused the rollers to just stay in place. And that's why you get these flat spots. And right away, looking in here, do you see any with flat spots? I can tell right there at our 7 o'clock. Big old flat spot right there on the top of that roller. It is extremely clear to see. Now I'm sure that some of these other rollers are also going to have flat spots on them once we remove them. But you know, this one's actually cracked quite a bit. This one on the top, no, these you really can't tell. It's kind of hard to tell. Once we take them out, we'll get a better look. Something else I wanted to mention, that grease plate that I removed. You do not need to put that back on. It has no meaning for the bike. It doesn't do anything. It is something that held the grease in place. It's not needed any longer. Throw it in the trash. And there you go. Take out the grease, no graphite. That's what I said. No graphite, no lubricant, no nothing. You remove every bit of the grease out of this and you never put it back in. These rollers, you do not clean them up and put them back in. You throw them away. Buy a replacement set. You get rid of that grease plate that is at the top of our screen. That goes in the garbage. It has no use other than keeping the grease in the variator, and there is no more grease. As far as these rollers, you can go ahead and buy rollers. You could buy sliders. You could buy different weight rollers, but that's a topic for a whole different series of videos, and that would be more in the tuning range. And we're not going to talk about tuning today. We're going to put back the same weight, or close to it, the same weight that was originally in it. And once we remove these rollers, these are gone for good, folks. You never clean them and reuse them. Make sure you replace them with all brand new. And here's one of my peak performance options I'm adding in their Dr. Pulley Sliders. Now, why are they called a slider? They're not fully circular. You can see how one end is long and flat. When you go to install these, you always want to make sure that you can see Dr. Pulley on the top. If you can't and it's not written straight across the top, as you can see right here, once I pull it out, that way you know it's in right. And as you can see, the slider, when it works, it goes like this. And that's why it's called a slider and not a roller. And this is definitely an upgrade to what was in the bike. You can see all the grease is no longer there. I got it all out. There might be a tiny spot here and there, but no worries. And here's how it looks after you install them all. And it shows you right here in the directions that you should be able to read the Dr. Pulley. And if you can't, you got them in wrong. So follow the directions, folks, and it will look just like that. It's kind of hard for me to zoom it in, but you can see Dr. Pulley written straight across. All right, let's move on to the ram plate next. And, I'm going through all the stuff just so you're aware. If you are familiar with this stuff, that's great. If not, then hopefully by me showing you all this, it's helpful. But anyway, you see how the rounded part at the bottom? That is the slide bottom portion. And you'll see that. Just lay them all on the floor like this so that you don't put the slides on upside down. Because if you do, it's not going to allow your ram plate to move freely in and out of the variator. And you can see here I've cleaned it all up. So when you go to reinstall these, just make sure that rounded part is on the bottom. And that's where we're going to stop volume 2. And volume 3 will continue on with the transmission. You can see I've actually painted the cover in the flat black. I like the way it looks in flat. Anyways, we will have volume 3 probably sometime in the very near future, hopefully. And if you like my videos, please subscribe and hit that notification button so you know when the next video is going to be on. And if you like my videos, give me a thumbs up. And if you don't like my videos, then don't watch. That's all I can say to that. But you know what? I enjoy all the comments you guys make. Please say whatever's on your mind. You're not going to hurt my feelings, trust me. But if you've got something to say, I will definitely answer you back. And I appreciate you all. So I will see you guys all soon.